So as I just explained, I've identified 4 different forms of content to build your brand. This webinar itself is not a writing workshop. I'll schedule one later, but at least I wanted to show you how to create one of these forms of content, what I call impact stories, and also to explain how I came up with this idea. I was living in Southern Africa at the time, in Lesotho, and I was hired by a not-for-profit to bring to life their impact on HIV orphans and their caregivers. And as I was interviewing some of these HIV orphans and their caregivers, I developed a certain methodology because I saw a repeating pattern that for me, I wanted to start at the beginning to identify how exactly they found themselves in these dire straits, and then to bring to light how exactly an organization then intervened and impacted their lives. And so I came up with this methodology, which actually is both an interviewing strategy for how to bring out that story, how to even bring out our own story of how we impacted a company or a client. And not only is it an interviewing strategy, but even a storytelling strategy. So let me show you. As you see on the screen now, I call it the fork in the road. So visually, for us to imagine a fork in the road. As you see, the diagram actually starts at the bottom arrow there, which is here is someone's life. We describe what exactly was their life like before, what exactly was going on with the company before, with the organization, what their challenge was. Why exactly was their life like this? Why exactly was the challenge this way? And especially with plenty of vivid examples. It's not enough to say life was hard. How hard was it, for example? Or company was facing a serious challenge. How challenging was it? How serious was it? Bring to life what exactly the challenge was like with a vivid visual example. So then that person is living their life, going along on this arrow on their path. And then they face a fork in the road. The fork in the road is that an individual could then continue on that path. A company, an organization could continue with what they've been doing before. If they've been struggling, then they could just say, hey, this is my struggle and I'm living my life. So you could then document, what if they continued down their path? What if the company had never hired you, never brought you on board? However, as we know, in this situation, this would be an impact story. They're following on this path. Then there's a knock on the door, figurative knock on the door, that somehow there's an intervention. In this situation, it was HIV positive individuals or those trying to avoid HIV, and they hear about a training. Maybe a neighbor in their village says, hey, there's a training. You should go to it. And they decide yes or no. If it's no, I'm not going to go. They continue on their path, but there's a reason why they ignore it. If they say, yes, I'm going to go to that training, or yes, I'm going to hire you to work for my company, my organization, to assist with my challenge, there must be a reason why. And as I described, then there's a knock on the door, which is, in other words, an intervention. That is a starting point that someone, something has intervened, and now we want to document in chronological time order. That now, as I say up at the top of the right-hand arrow, let's illuminate, let's bring to light the beginning of that influence and the impact, step by step in specific detail. Or if we, working for a company and organization, we want to bring to life our impact, then I came up with an idea. Or then working with a team, I did this because, and with this result, then I did that because with that result. This is another diagram I came up with. This is also part of that storytelling, which I call the Darwinian origins and evolution. This classic story of the before and after. No story, no situation happens in a vacuum. There's always some origin as to where exactly that story, that situation, that issue begins and why. So as I describe it here, there's the deep past. As you see, it's not a straight line, because no story is that linear. The origins, where exactly does this story begin or this situation begin, and why exactly does it begin there? If you start working for a company and here's where they were before, but more importantly, it's not just like you're a court stenographer, the story starts here. No, why exactly does it begin there? The backstory, the relevant, necessary details to give some context. With this timeline, you can identify key moments along this timeline, landmarks that are necessary for your audience to know. So as I say, I call this the more recent past. That's what we call the evolution, how things change over time. And the question I ask is, how exactly does a story or situation change or evolve over time? And why exactly does it change or evolve the way it does? Very detailed storytelling, but only with the most relevant or necessary details. Then we come up to the present. And now, if we've done an effective job of presenting the most relevant and necessary background from the deep past and the more recent past, now when we get to the present of us claiming our impact, then our reader will be able to understand very clearly, oh, now I understand how and why you did what you did, or why you were able to do what you did. And lastly, and in terms of storytelling, then we want to finish with the future. Where exactly does this situation or issue or challenge go from here? That's more storytelling, but it's related to the impact story to show where they go from here, where this challenge goes from here. Lastly, I just want to show about how to even structure this story. I came up with this story structure many years ago, which I call the diamond, as you see on the screen. What's interesting about this approach is that naturally, as a writer, whenever we're writing, we may say, okay, how to open in a clever, interesting way to draw the reader in. But actually, when it comes to the writing, we should start at the middle of the diamond. I call it the big picture. What is our core message? In this situation, this is a personal impact story about our impact. What exactly, going back to my 4-step formula, who exactly is going to be reading and consuming my brand building content? What do I want to say, and why exactly do I want to say it? What core messages do I want my target audience to know? So now if I'm creating an impact story, this is strategic storytelling, meaning storytelling with a purpose. And that purpose is to persuade a client, a potential employer or partner, that they should hire us, that they should partner with us, that they should donate to our cause, whatever it may be. So once we feel good about it and we can justify and defend why exactly we want to say what we say, now we go to the beginning and say, let me think of the most colorful and relevant, again, relevant way to open colorfully, meaningfully, and then leading our reader down to that core message. Let me explain just a few more of these steps, which is I call it the curtain raiser. The curtain goes up to show our main character. It could be us if we're writing about ourselves, an impact story about ourselves. It could be describing a colleague or the company. We want to show someone doing something for some relevant reason. There are 4 key steps to a curtain raiser. Right away, we want to show someone. Why? To humanize our story. If it's about us, when I approached this client, they were struggling with the issue of X, Y, Z. But then I was able to create something. I was able to propose something, to implement something. So what we want to do is we want to see someone, you, doing something. We want to see movement, action, even drama, for some relevant reason. That's the 3rd step, to show your contribution, your impact. And then the 4th step would be, normally in a story, it might be a quote. As I describe it, a deep, meaningful quote of expressing thoughts, feelings, emotions, opinions, analysis. In this situation, it could be you explaining why exactly you did what you did, why exactly what you did was so impactful. And then opening up to the diamond, then you can say, and this is one example of the sort of contributions you've made over the years, or the sort of impact that you offer to clients. The big picture is your core message about yourself. And then, as you see here, the remainder, the second half of the diamond, actually now is that timeline from the previous slide. You can transition to the past by saying something like, indeed, this company or this organization had struggled with this issue for several months or several years. And then you go back into the past, where you then explain the origin story, where exactly the story begins and why, and then that journey. Then you knock on the door, your intervention, and you're documenting your impact. That is what I call an impact story. Again, This is a rough overview, but I'd be happy to work with you one-on-one or with a writing workshop to actually coach you through the process of writing an entire impact story.